Good morning, and welcome to another Writer's Morning Commute. Yesterday I watched a video on Guardians of the Galaxy by the Nostalgia Chick, I think is what her YouTube channel is. I will try to link it below. Her video mostly focused on Guardians 2, though she did touch on Guardians 1 some. I thought it was a really good video. Made me think about some things I hadn't considered about the series previously. But also made me think about how, in conversations about the series, there seems to be a pretty significant split in the fandom, from what I've seen, between people who thought the first one was almost perfect and thought the second one was too similar, and people who thought the first one was okay and thought the second one was fantastic. I personally fall in the latter of those categories. I thought the first Guardians of the Galaxy was actually one of my least favorite Marvel movies when it came out. It might have actually been my least favorite when it came out. It's probably above a few others now. And I just remembered all these people, a lot of people who I appreciate their, opinions and usually agree with them, who were just saying that this was the best movie ever. And I was just happy that it did well, because that meant I would get more Marvel goodness in the future. Because at that point I was still afraid that the MCU was just going to fall apart after one bad movie. Which at this point I think we're past that fear, even though I don't think they've had an actually bad movie yet. That aside, when I look at people's comments about these, it seems like the people who liked Guardians 1, Volume 1 more than Volume 2, their main complaint is that Volume 2 recycled all of their jokes from Volume 1. And a lot of them tend to talk about the Guardians franchise as if it is primarily a comedy. Whereas the people who talk about liking Volume 2 more than Volume 1, I don't know if they actually talk about it more, but for me personally, the thing I loved about 2 was how emotional it was. Like, there were a bunch of emotional moments that actually made me feel something. Guardians 2 made me cry, which is not something that happens often, and definitely not something that happens often because of a movie, and especially not something that happens often because of a movie in a public theater. I went to see it with my wife, and after we go to see a movie together, we usually, discuss if we liked it or not, and what we liked about it afterwards. With Volume 2, it took me a good 10 to 15 minutes after having left the theater before I could talk about it. Like, I got in the car, and I just knew that if I started talking about it, I was going to start crying, and we weren't going to be able to discuss it. So we talked about something else for about 10 to 15 minutes before I finally got myself together. And for me, that was majorly lacking in Volume 1. Volume 1 shoved so many things into your normal movie time. It had the 5 main characters. It had Thanos. It had Nebula. It had Ronan. It had the Nova Corps as a concept. It had the Nova Corps characters. It had the Ravagers. It had Yondu. It had multiple other planets. Like, there were just so many named proper nouns. And they didn't have time to really develop anything at all. Peter had the most shallow of hero arcs, and you had the very stereotypical get the team together deal. And then beyond that, the only thing they had time to do was kind of introduce everybody's personality. Like, they didn't have time to develop, they didn't have time to delve into any aspects of the characters. Rocket's angst over his creation felt kind of shoehorned in and rushed. Drax had a little bit of emotion, but there wasn't enough time to develop it to make it actually impactful for me. The whole thing just felt like it needed at least another half hour of character development. Like, it was gorgeous, it was funny, but ultimately it was just kind of eye candy. It was a very popcorn experience for me. Going into Volume 2, I was hoping for more, if not necessarily expecting more. Luckily, I definitely got more in Volume 2. The thing I loved about Volume 2 was how deep we went into the characters emotionally. We were at least at the halfway point, maybe farther than the halfway point. Spoiler alert, I didn't know that Ego was the bad guy, and I couldn't figure out who the bad guy was supposed to be. Like, I was expecting a threat to show up, I wasn't sure what was going to happen, and then as soon as Ego said that he put that tumor in Peter's mom, like, chills went down my spine. Oh man. And as the video I mentioned earlier talks about, the second movie has a very strong theme about family. Who we choose to count as family, who we cut off as family when we cut them off. I feel like taking the time to focus on those emotions definitely made the film stronger. That's where I'm going to have to end today. Thank you for hanging out with me. I hope you have a great day.